I've been in the private sector for 43 years, and unlike government, we don't just raise taxes when we're having budget issues. We cut costs. We eliminate overtime. We eliminate non-essential travel, non-essential expenses, until we are able to meet our budget. And when things start flowing green again, well, then spending goes good again. But we don't just increase taxes or do things like this kind of a project. We tighten the belt. We need to tighten the belt. I looked at annual salaries for city employees for the city of Port Hueneme. There are 70, well, first of all, the median income in the city of Port Hueneme, household income, husbands and wives, there are several two-income families in these homes. The median income is a little over $61,000 a year. We currently have 75 city employees with compensation packages in excess of $100,000 a year. We have 11 city employees whose pay and benefits are $200,000 plus per year. Many of those are police officers. And don't get me wrong, our police are doing a good job. I believe people should be adequately compensated for the job they do, but not excessively. Some of these police officers are getting up to 40% above and beyond their salary in overtime. Up to 50% in a category called other pay. I don't know what other pay is, but I'd sure like to get on that bandwagon. Benefits of up to $50,000 per person, some of these people, on top of the salary and overtime and other pay.
You've made that point.
Yeah, I mean, what I would recommend is that we get an independent budget review, and let's see what we can do to reduce costs before we start giving away our beautiful, quiet, quaint community, which is the reason we're all living here. It'll ruin the city forever. And I don't know if it would be possible, but I understand the desire to have a beachfront hotel. What about somewhere a little further south between the power plant and, say, Surfside 3?
It's Oxnard.
Is it Oxnard?
It's Oxnard and it's protected.
Okay, all right, well, that idea is out, but it would be nice to have something that would block that horrible. Okay, that's it for now. All right,
Good evening, everyone. I have a question. How many of you shop at Smart and Final?
What's your name?
Francine, as he said. And how many of you shop at Smart and Final across the street? Everyone shops at Smart and Final? About half the room. How many of you shop at Seabridge? The Vons, the shopping area, Pizza Man Dan's? That's the other half of the room. You know how much money the city gets? That much. City of Port Hueneme receives from the State Board of Equalization less than $1 million a year in tax revenue. That means people are not spending money here in the city of Port Hueneme.
How many people here shop in Port Hueneme? How many?
No doubt that you do.
Thank you.
Yes, no doubt that you do. As I said, you were 1 million.
Here make a
Hey,
point.
sir, I wasn't rude to you. Sir, I wasn't rude to you when you spoke, so can I please have my time? I didn't do this to you for your statement. So please respect my time, sir.
Go for it.
So when the city looks at things,
You live in Port Hueneme.
I work and I used to live and now I live in South Oxnard. And I shop here.
That makes sense.
No, I'm not a city employee.
She's not a city employee.
Let the lady speak, please.
So the city, when figuring out how they're going to pay for things, they look at their income, their revenue. Revenue being taxes, property taxes, special taxes from the state, things like that. And they look at what the residents want. What did the voters say they wanted to have? They wanted increased services, increased programs, increased services in parks, and at the end of the day, they want to appease the constituents. That's what most elected officials are trying to do, to get reelected. But in doing that, they don't foresee the backlash of things. The money's good today, but no one plans for when the budget goes bust. So when the budget goes bust, they start looking at revenues. They start calling the state agencies saying, are we sure we got all of our tax revenue we're due to us? They start calling the federal, hey, did we get what we're gonna do? And then they have to figure out how they're gonna say we're gonna cut services. And then they have to figure out what are we gonna do to pay the day-to-day bills. That's basic public administration when figuring out what we're going to do. As far as the employee costs, you can look at Department of Labor standards of incomes for city employees. But what a lot of people fail to realize about government is that when everything, private business, and other things fail, who has to come to the rescue? Government. When the housing went bust, when the banks were too big to fail, who had to do the bailout? The taxpayers and the government. When insurance doesn't pay, or you can't get insurance, who has to bail you out? Government. Government has to pay for those services. And a lot of people forget that about government. They're here to do two jobs: administer the taxes and administer what we're paying for, what we pay to every year when we do our taxes. The other thing we have to figure out is when they're paying for services that we're requesting. I live here or I live there, and this is what I want. And there's just not enough to go around. So the real conversation has to be, if we cut this now, what's the blowback? Blowback is a long-term effect of a problem. Like homelessness, the blowback is when we closed our state hospitals and released all those people. We're now paying a very dear price for that, between first responders, police, and our tax dollars to services. Now, I'm not saying I agree, disagree, or what with this project. And there's a natural shoreline that doesn't go with this. This isn't the natural beach. It's further back, as many of you know, as you all learned when that street was crumbling. And that was a big issue. And we have to sit down and have a real conversation with the city and say, what are we willing to give up to not have to do this? And it has to be a real conversation, a real plan of execution, and what's going to be the real long-term effects. Because after you're gone, the next set of residents and the next set of residents, because how much are we paying for the people before us? Because I'm paying a lot right now for the people before me, and my kids are going to pay double that. So it's a real conversation to have. And I hope a lot of you really put the time and energy into figuring that out. Thank you.
Tracy.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. My name is Tracy Sisson Phillips. I reside at 1793 North 5th Street in Port Hueneme. My backyard is on Ventura Road. I was asked earlier this evening, are you a city employee? I see you at a lot of things. And no, I'm not a city employee. I'm the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce in Port Hueneme. And let me be clear about two things about the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce in Port Hueneme. One, it's a part-time gig. And two, it doesn't pay what you think a CEO would make. Especially compared to other chambers of commerce in our county and of towns of the same size in other areas that are more resort towns. I share a lot of your concerns with the increase in crime and the increase in traffic. I live on Ventura Road, my backyard, all day long. But I'm also not willing to get rid of the protection that our police department provides. And I think, Rod, correct me if I'm wrong, the number one expense in our budget is the police department? Yes. And if we had to make a cut to balance the budget, that would potentially be something that could be cut to get there, correct? How many of you have friends that live over on the Channel Islands harbor side of Oxnard? So if you go over harbor and you turn down where the Whale's Tail used to be, everybody knows where the Whale's Tail? Yeah. Okay. That particular part, unincorporated part of Oxnard is patrolled by the Highway Patrol. Do you know what their response time is when there's an incident on that side of town? It's not what we get in Port Hueneme. So I hear you all loud and clear, as an advocate of business, as an advocate of job creation, there's a lot of good that can come if we go through this process to each other being kind and thinking about what we want the future to be, not just in 5 years or 10 years, but if we really want our property to be worth something, because if you really think that we're getting matched right now, where we're at, we're not. So just be kind, be open to discussion, and realize that 84 homeowners, I think somebody quoted earlier, that live. I hope you all do go to the polls, because there's more than 84 on the other side that are going to want to see something done somewhere. And there are only 2 developable plots of land in the city of Port Hueneme. This place and at Market Street, you're right. But Market Street's not going to bear what this property is because of the amenity. Who remembers, gosh, it's been 5 years now since we had the development get approved over at, by the Rite Aid. And that still hasn't gone anywhere yet. And I know they're coming up on the need to get that project moving, or they're going to lose their permits through coastal. That's going to be apartment homes and retail space. I do have a question, being the CEO of the chamber and concerned about jobs and the decision to put office buildings there, because I get asked quite frequently, why do you have so many open retail spaces? And I know there's a difference between retail and office space in terms of price per square foot, etc. But what's the draw for the business, the office space?
Sidebar here on that project. I wasn't involved with it. My understanding is that really came out of the Coastal Commission consideration of the project. The Coastal Commission's really big on retail, visitor serving retail, not so much on office, and I don't think the owner of the project or the developer is thrilled at all with having retail space that's very difficult to fill, but I think that was imposed on him.
Yeah. And another thing I'd just like to add for just general education, 2.5 years ago, the city joined partnership, in partnership with the hoteliers in the city of Port Hueneme, joined an organization called the Ventura County Lodging Association. And the association combines with the cities of Camarillo, Ventura, and Oxnard, and collects a 2% room occupancy, it's not an occupancy tax, it's like a business district or improvement tax. 2% that comes from the visitors that come to Port Hueneme, and that money is actually put into a large fund. The 2% for the total of those 4 cities is in excess of $2 million a year. And 80% of that money is used to promote the Ventura County Coast. You can follow them on Facebook. They do a lot of tourism. They promote Hueneme Beach, they promote Oxnard, Camarillo, Ventura. But that has actually increased our hotel occupancy rate here in Port Hueneme to where there is good potential that we would be able to put a hotel well into the occupancy they would need because there is interest in this area. The other 20% is actually then kept for the city, for the hoteliers to use to help to promote events like the beach festival. So if we were to bring back some sort of event that brought people back to the beach, those funds could be used there. That would be less taxing on the city. Question?
Yeah, the beach festival was one of the first things that they did away with.
Mm-hmm.
The beach festival could have been a very lucrative money-making opportunity by charging vendors a fee and
Go ahead.
and going ahead and allowing people to pay parking, et cetera, and so forth.
So, I was a vendor at that beach festival for probably about 4 or 5 years before I got involved with the Chamber of Commerce, and the city did charge me $350 for the 2-day event. So they did charge the vendors that came down there, whether you were somebody making crafts out of your garage, or if you were somebody from LA who had a big retail thing that you wanted to come down and sell special beach stuff. I was there the 1 year that they charged for entry to the beach festival. And you know how many people came? A hell of a lot less than when it was free. They charged $10 per person to get in.
So what about $2?
I know, sorry.
Let me just echo what you're saying. the city was,
And the city paid for all of that, so it was, they had to cut those funds for the beach festival. But nobody can come and do something else because of restrictions. But, sorry, Steve, to steer this somewhere else.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Ma'am?
Could you remind me of the name of this developer?
She's asked the name of the potential developer for the site. Did the earlier project, his name was Harvey Champlin. His own company, Champlin Development.
I encourage everybody to look at his website. He is an uber-rich, very successful resort developer. The type of resort that absolutely does not belong in Port Hueneme. So go to that website and maybe send him a couple of emails.
If you want to look up his website, that always a good suggestion, just to understand what his background is. His last name is spelled Champlin, Champlin.
Good evening, my name is Linda Ingram. I'm a 30-plus year resident of Port Hueneme, and I love living here. I'm not particularly enthused about hotels because we'll have who knows how many people coming from wherever disturbing our peaceful way of life. In terms of the fact that the city has some financial problems, I understand that. And I understand we need to solve it, find a way that we can do it together, and pretty much maintain the quality of life. I suggest that you might want to think about tapping into Channel Island University and look at their business department and look at perhaps getting some support from the students to come and get involved, because they are the future. We're not the future, they are. Things are changing. Amazon is eating up jobs. The malls are ghostly. We're going through a significant change in this country. And people are just kind of blindly going along and say, oh, just let them drop it at my door. Well, while they're dropping at your door, malls are closing. People are losing their jobs. And there is no pushback. And I feel sorry because the people who own the malls have no vision in terms of what they're going to even do with that space and what they're going to do with that property. There are many, many, many jobs being lost because of Amazon, but nobody doing no pushback. So I think we need to have a conversation around many things that are very well integrated. One thing, it's all kind of a domino. When one thing falls, a lot of things fall along the way. And I think we are intelligent enough, creative enough to come up with some real solutions. And will the council members please learn to deal with one another and the city rather than by beating up one another? I'm very disappointed with the fact that we have gone through the process of elected people to run this city and they're busy squabbling among themselves. You know, so I'm saying we have a future, we have a beautiful community. I always tell people this is one of the nicest places to live because people are courteous, they acknowledge one another, they're polite, and as the numbers grow, that goes with it. And I like this out of this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
My name is Cheryl McMichael. I've lived here since 1983. I've owned up to 3 properties here, and I'm a taxpayer. I just have questions. I love listening to all your sentiments, and I love Port Hueneme. Obviously, I've lived here for 40-some years now, too. It seems now that I've listened to your answers as far as what you do and do not know tonight. And so some of these questions that I have are redundant. The first one is it true that you don't have an assessed value of this property?
No, I'm sure there is an assessed value.
Do you know the assessed value?
I don't. It's certainly available.
Why would you come unprepared to this meeting?
It doesn't have an assessed value because it's by the city.
Oh, well, there you go.
So on a city property, there is no,
They don't pay taxes, so it's not assessed.
There's no assessed value. How do you
There you
get
go.
an assessed value? Because you're going to the...
I think we're mixing up assessed value and appraised value, two different things.
Well, and what I said earlier was we don't have an appraised value yet, although we are undertaking to get that now.
All right, so it wasn't mandatory yet at this point in the presentation. Because there's some legal reason that you have to give this presentation to the community and follow guidelines as far as presenting this project, correct? No, it's just out of human interest, drew us together? Okay, it's more about like, not even a needs analysis, it's just a popularity. Okay.
Hold the mic up to you.
What projected revenues have you discussed for the sale and the 200-bed hotel? Is that the kind of idea?
We haven't discussed any revenue. As I said before, this is very early in the project. I threw out some numbers which were intended to give everybody just a sense of the order of magnitude of what might be possible from a project like that.
So in the 37 pages of the city council, there's been no more than that discussed? Or is it just that you're not required to go further in this presentation to the residents?
Your question was the price discussed before in those 37 pages? No.
No revenue projections have been.
No revenue projections have been made. That comes down the line, but we're
It's
not.
hard to believe because the reason you're selling this project is because.
I can't hear you.
The reason they're selling the project is because of the projected revenue. So why am I not getting any realistic?
Because we believe that the potential for projected revenues is high enough that it merits the city thinking seriously about looking into it.
High enough. It's hard for me to go with the high enough, but I'll have to do that because at what point will you be able to provide us those answers?
I can't tell you for sure now because we don't know where this is headed. It may head nowhere, in which case there won't be any answers. But, I guess that's the preferred course tonight. But in the untoward event that discussions keep going, Tony talked before about the planning process and the studies that have been made, and has to be brought back to the city council. One of those public meetings, when the information is provided to the council, will be the meeting when it's available to everybody.
Do you know how much time it took you as at the city council to publish and produce 37 pages on studying this project?
No, to be honest, I'm not sure what the 37 pages refers to. But if there are minutes from a city council meeting when this was discussed, I know that's done every meeting. It's what the city clerk does.
It's the same minutes that detail all the information about the marijuana.
Okay, right. Anyhow, that's the standard role of the city clerk to provide those minutes for every meeting.
So what I'm getting at is the per hour cost of developing the study, but you don't have any answers from it that can give us any quantitative feedback. Are these separate parcels? Yes, they are. And we weren't even sure of the acreage of the parcels?
Yes, there we go. That's my question.
Do you don't know the acreage of the two parcels? You don't have an actual number, 1.7 per parcel? Do you know the parcel numbers? Can we look at the parcel map?
Absolutely, that's all available on the county assessor's website. I mean, they all have parcel numbers. They all have acreage assigned to them. I can't remember exactly what the number is. 3.5 total. The two parcels together come to 3.5 acres.
So they're on the assessor's map, but they only have an appraisal, no assessment. Okay, because they belong to the city. Now, what prevents the change of the use if this is approved? If you were to sell this two parcels, or could you separate them and sell them if the city approves it, even though they approve it for the plan that you present? Could the plan be changed once the new owner has the property?
No.
No. So the use after it goes through all the process and ends with the coastal commission, the use could not be changed.
Because the city would restrict the need.
Okay. The Hueneme Performing Arts Center, I know it's a little different situation because I know that there was money given to us to build that, but then there was no use for it and we sold it off privately, is that correct? You don't know you don't know, okay. It's true. So if it was to go through and there's this huge project on the beach and it fails financially and they just go bankrupt somewhere in the building process, or who then is stuck with that liability of an eyesore or a non-revenue producing business?
That's a good question that I'm going to defer for a minute to our city attorney, because he's got some wrap-up comments to be made, and I'll make sure that's part of what he talks about.
All right, I'm almost done. A parking structure. Let's say that this is chosen as the parking, underground parking as you propose, which we all laugh at you out of the building because the water table's like 2 feet. So what prevents you from building a 12-story parking structure there as well as a 12-story office building and hotel? Not you specifically, but the developer.
The zoning that pertains to the properties.
And are they separate zones?
At the moment, yes they are. Yes they
They
are.
are. And how do we find out what the zoning is for those two parts?
You can talk to Mr. Stewart right here, who knows that information, or you can check with city sources
And if we
at
pay
City
you enough
Hall.
money to change, if someone paid you enough money and went through all the rigmarole to change the zoning, could they get the zoning changed? They could. And could they switch these properties and decide to build a hotel here and the parking there?
No.
Why not?
Not without the city's council's agreement and consent. I mean, that's the whole process of going through this to get.
Negotiating, so someone could potentially negotiate to get consent to switch the project footprint or whatever after it was sold.
No, not after. No. At this point.
During the process, it's possible that could happen.
You know,
We would be unaware of it until it was done.
No. At this point, anything is possible. We could, the developer could decide he wants a topless pizza there, and so that,
Could happen.
well, that could be considered by the council, but it's all a public process that winds up
Right.
in front of your elected representatives who have to make the decision about what the land use is, right?
Yes. The process, in coming into this, I thought things were fairly smooth, and there weren't a lot of options available, but it seems that there are a lot of options, and so people better keep an eye on what's going on here. Thank you.
Steve, what's the current zoning of those two properties?
The current thing was,
So this is basically PR, which would be park, recreation, parking, and whatnot. So it's very limited in the type of use. It's
So
not
it's already zoned for that?
Correct,
Okay.
right. This is the only CS zoned piece of property in the city. What that means is that it's basically port and recreational serving commercial. So it's very unique. It's not your standard C1 zoning, which we find in our shopping centers and whatnot. So this is a very unique piece of property that has already been singled out by the Coastal Commission for recreation type uses, such as a hotel, port serving uses or whatnot, which is why this is being presented to the meeting.
thanks, Tom.